And it's not just Oregon making big changes. California, as we mentioned, California's Governor Gavin Newsom announced today that 30 counties will now be required to close indoor operations. That includes fitness centers, places of worship, offices, hair salons, and shopping centers. Governor Newsom said this decision was made because of the continued hospitalizations and growing number of cases of the coronavirus. He also cited a growing number of hospitalizations in rural counties.
We're starting to see in some rural parts of the state an increase in ICU use that is generating some concern. Let me be specific. In Placer County and Butte County, ICU capacity is now limited south of 20% capacity.
Joining us now to discuss today's announcement from Governor Gavin Newsom is California Representative Doug DeMalfa. Thanks very much for being with us.
Glad to be on. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Tell me a little about your reaction to the governor's announcement today about sort of rolling back some of the opening.
Well, again, for our business owners and such, they bring in inventory and then they have to figure out how they're going to use it up. As perishable items, it's tough on them because it's a yo-yo deal. And what we're most frustrated by is that we have a lot of rural counties that I represent in the north part of the state, including Modoc and Siskiyou up there at the far end. And so the numbers are extremely low. Modoc has never even had an infection yet. And Siskiyou has only a tiny handful of current folks that are infected. So we're looking at a situation where it isn't the business's fault. What we're finding is the contact people are making outside them. The restaurants, the small businesses, they're all adhering. People are masking up, they're keeping distance and all that. So it shouldn't be such a hard no on some of the counties that are receiving this order.
Well, certainly, as you know, there have been states that have made more strict restrictions, and they, specifically New York, have been able to slow the spread, even in areas that had fewer cases, like the counties that you represent. But aren't we all sort of in this together, and especially those folks on the I-5 corridor, like we are in Medford? Your folks in Northern California come to our place in reverse. What would you suggest if we don't lock this down?
Well, again, it needs to be a little more finesse on that, because on a county-by-county basis, you need to look at several factors. What is the number of current infections? What's the hospital space you have? And that's not really being looked at by Sacramento. It's being a lot more broad, and that's hurting people at the local level. And I know my constituents are a lot of them getting pretty angry about it because it seems so arbitrary and it doesn't seem to fit the bill for what they're dealing with. So the county lines or even the state lines are arbitrary. If we were in Idaho, for example, it wouldn't be like this. So for these small counties, again, I have a county that has 0 infections in it, and they don't understand why something coming from Sacramento is telling them they can't do basic things.
Well, isn't there the obvious concern about folks who live in those counties won't just be in contact with people who live in those counties?
What do you mean by that?
Well, doesn't your representative groups also have come in contact with folks who might be from counties that have higher infection rates? Because we also in Southern Oregon had a county that for a long time didn't have any cases, and that number went away pretty quickly once those cases started to hit. So again, we sort of all in this together, in that when we travel and communicate and gather in places, whether it be family or in a public institution, we invariably put each other at risk?
Certainly. We saw where, like, for example, the governor of South Dakota, she kind of put it on people to be a little more self-responsible. And in the beginning of this, people were doing that. They understood, hey, we got to stay in. We got to wear masks if you go out. A lot of things are closed down. So you start to give them a little freedom, then you take it back. Now, one of the most maddening things we have in Lassen County, just a little more south of you, is that they took a bunch of prison inmates from outside the area and put them into the Susanville prison there. And so now the prison has 200 cases, whereas the county has, I think, 19. So the state isn't being very smart on how they're moving people around. They're a big part of the problem in that. So I think if you let people, again, when you're attacking the businesses, that's not where the problem is. The contact tracing is the area that we're going to have the most results, is by having people be responsible what they're doing in their groups outside of what's happening in a small business or what have you. So, it's kind of the wrong remedy for especially rural counties. You can talk I-5 corridor and all that, but if people are going into businesses, if they're still going in being masked and keeping the distancing within that, if it's a liquor store, if it's a market, if it's whatever, they're still adhering to the guidelines that they have there. And if they're doing that, then you're going to have success.
Congressman Doug LaMalfa, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Take care.
Today, Jackson